A lawyer humiliated a black boy who was at the door of his office, but he was in shock after discovering who he was. David Johnson, one of the most renowned lawyers in the city, was sitting at his desk, surrounded by piles of documents. The office, with large windows that let in sunlight, exuded an atmosphere of power and success. He adjusted his tie, checked his reflection in the glass, and smiled with satisfaction. He was a man who always took pride in his position and, even more, in his lifestyle. To him, the world was a grand competition, and he was determined to win. It was then that, looking out the window, he spotted a figure that caught his attention. At the door of his office stood a black boy, poorly dressed and with a look of insecurity, holding a worn-out folder. The boy, who looked no older than 12, gazed inside with hope. David frowned, instantly assessing the situation. Another beggar, he thought to himself, as an arrogant smile formed on his lips. He had no time for this. "What do you want, kid?" David shouted, his voice echoing in the empty hallway. Indignation was evident in his tone. "Get lost, I have nothing for you." Malik, the young boy, hesitated for a moment, as if David's words had hit him like a punch to the stomach. He wasn't there to ask for money, but to seek an opportunity that could change his life. With the folder clutched against his chest, Malik replied in a faint voice, "Sir, I just wanted to talk about a scholarship." "Scholarship?" David interrupted, laughing contemptuously. "Do you think someone like you has a chance at that? Go play, kid." Malik, feeling the warmth of tears in his eyes, stepped away from the office door, the weight of humiliation piling on his shoulders. He didn't understand why he had been treated that way. He just wanted a chance. With faltering steps, he walked away, the folder now feeling even heavier in his hands. Meanwhile, David returned to his documents, but the image of the boy wouldn't leave his mind. He allowed himself a brief moment of reflection, but quickly pushed it aside. "I can't get involved with these things," he thought, determined to ignore any feelings of guilt that might arise. To him, the world was simple. There were winners and losers, and he always positioned himself among the former. However, the atmosphere around him began to change. Traffic on the streets increased, the noise of sirens and distant voices began to invade his space, but David paid no attention. He was immersed in his own bubble of selfishness. Looking out the window again, he realized the boy had vanished into the crowd. "What a shame," David muttered, returning to lose himself in his commitments. Another one who doesn't know how to fight for himself. The day dragged on, filled with meetings and negotiations, but something inside David began to bother him. He was not a bad person, or at least that's how he saw himself. But at that moment, a small seed of doubt was planted in his mind. What would have happened if he had listened to Malik? Deep down, he knew that life was made of choices, and that choice left him uneasy. Tomorrow will be a better day, he tried to convince himself, but the memory of the boy's sad eyes continued to echo in his mind. Unbeknownst to him, David's fate was about to change, and the intersection of their lives was approaching rapidly. David Johnson's office was a reflection of his success. Dark wood furniture, carefully selected artwork, and a stunning view of the city. However, that day was far from ordinary. The sun was shining brightly outside. The atmosphere inside was charged with tension. Mr. Thompson, a longtime client of David's, entered the room, visibly nervous. His face was pale, and beads of sweat trickled down his forehead. He adjusted his tie, trying to project an appearance of control, but his eyes betrayed his anxiety. "David, I don't know how to start," Mr. Thompson said, voice trembling. He sat down at the table, his hands shaking slightly as they touched the polished surface. David looked at the man, trying to understand the gravity of the situation. "Calm down, Mr. Thompson. What's going on? You seem worried." "It's my son, Malik. He's missing," Mr. Thompson replied, voice choked. "He left home earlier today for a scholarship interview, and he hasn't returned. Can't find him." Mr. Thompson's words resonated in David like a distant echo. Mention of the name Malik made his heart race. He remembered the boy he had encountered earlier, the one he had kicked out of his office without a second thought. "Malik? You said Malik?" David struggled to maintain his composure, but the unease began to take hold of him. "Yes, Malik. He's a smart kid, full of dreams. The scholarship could change everything for us," Mr. Thompson said, his voice now laden with desperation. He was so excited about this interview. I can't imagine what could have happened. David leaned back in his chair, his mind spinning. The image of the poorly dressed boy, holding the worn briefcase, wouldn't leave his head. He forced a deep breath, trying to push away the guilt that was starting to settle in his chest. Where was the interview? Can I help in any way? The location is at the city music school. They offer only a few scholarships each year, and Malik had everything prepared. I need to find him before it's too late. Mr. Thompson, come on, I'll help you look for him. We can't waste time. The two men left the office together, a reminder of the reality that surrounded them. As they walked through the streets, David looked around, asking anyone he encountered if they had seen the boy. The chaos of the city seemed to increase, with people running back and forth, but David's mind was focused only on Malik. Do you have any idea where he might have gone? David asked, trying to keep hope alive. I don't know. He always talked about that park near the school. He might have gone there to calm down. Mr. Thompson replied, concern etched on his face. Let's go there, David said, determined. We need to find him. As they walked, David struggled against his own prejudices. He remembered how he had treated Malik and how his first impression had led him to act cruelly. What I didn't know. I just thought he was something else, he murmured, mostly to himself. We can't change the past, David, Mr. Thompson said, interrupting his thoughts. But we can do whatever it takes to find my son now. David nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He wasn't just helping a client. He was trying to correct a mistake that could have devastating consequences. Let's find Malik, he said, determination in his voice now stronger than ever. And so they continued their search, each step heavier than the last, but with the hope that there was still time to change the young boy's fate. David Johnson was absorbed in his thoughts, his mind still hammering on the first interaction he had with Malik. Mr. Thompson's anguished expression made him feel increasingly guilty. The man sitting in front of him was so desperate that his hands trembled, and his words came out hurriedly, as if each syllable was a cry for help. He was so excited about this interview, Mr. Thompson said, his voice choked. Malik prepared for weeks. He believed this scholarship could change our lives. David felt a knot form in his throat. The image of Malik, poorly dressed boy he had kicked out, perhaps without even realizing how vulnerable the boy was, now danced in his mind in a new light. What does he look like? What was he wearing? David asked, trying to gather information that could guide him in finding the boy. He was wearing a white shirt and black pants. Mr. Bohr, Thompson replied, his eyes beginning to shine with tears. He's a smart boy and music is his passion. He was so eager to showcase his talent, to prove that he can be someone. David felt suffocated by guilt. How could he have been so quick to judge? The boy was just trying to seek an opportunity, and he, in his arrogance, didn't give him a chance at all. Mr. Thompson, I'm so sorry. I saw him earlier today at my door. I thought he was a beggar. Mr. Thompson looked at him, his eyes filled with disbelief. You kicked him out? Yes. David's voice came out almost as a whisper, so laden with remorse that he could barely recognize his own tone. But now I need to find him. The interview, it's very important, isn't it? Extremely, Mr. Thompson confirmed, shaking his head. If he doesn't show up, I don't know what will become of us. He's the first in our family to have this chance. He could achieve everything, David. The urgency in his father's voice made David stand up abruptly. I will find him, I promise. Where was the last place you saw him? He was heading toward downtown. Maybe he went to the park, or even to school. I just want him to be safe, Mr. Thompson said, wiping the tears that were streaming down his face. David felt a wave of determination sweep over him. Couldn't afford to fail again. I'll search everywhere. I'll do whatever it takes to bring him back. I will correct my mistake. But how will you do that? Mr. Thompson asked, his voice heavy with expectation and doubt. I know some people downtown. I'll ask everyone I meet. Malik needs me, and I can't let him down again, David replied, already moving toward the door. Please don't leave him alone. He might be feeling very lost right now, Mr. Thompson pleaded, his eyes fixed on David. Don't worry. I won't stop until I find him, David assured him, leaving the office like a man on a mission. Fresh air of the city hit him hard, and the reality of what he had to do set in. He began to walk quickly, asking every passerby if they had seen a boy with the characteristics that Mr. Thompson had described. "Have you seen a boy? Something like this?" he asked, picturing Malik in his mind. "He should be around here. He's in a hurry." The city was bustling, full of hurried people, and the pressure mounted with every passing second. David felt his heart race, not just from running, but from the possibility that if he couldn't find Malik in time, he might lose not only the boy's chance but a part of his own humanity. He couldn't let prejudice define him. It was time to confront his mistakes head-on and do what was right. David Johnson sat at his desk, still stunned by Mr. Thompson's words. The name Malik echoed in his mind like a distant bell, reverberating the guilt and shame that began to accumulate in his heart. He looked out the window of his office, watching the bustling city outside. The demonstration that filled the streets was a glaring reminder of the turmoil and pain many people faced daily. Yet, in his mind, there was only one boy, Malik. "How could I have been so insensitive?" David murmured to himself, his fingers pressing against the polished wooden table. He felt he needed to do something. But what? The urgency of the situation became increasingly clear. Malik was just trying to change his life, and in a moment of disregard, David had done everything wrong. The lawyer stood up abruptly, his chair sliding back with a creak. "I need to find that boy," he decided aloud, his determination growing by the moment. "I need to correct my mistake." David left the office with a speed that surprised even himself. The city air was thick with tension, and the crowd on the street seemed like a wave of discontent. He took a deep breath, trying to focus on the mission ahead of him. Wondering if Malik had found shelter somewhere safe, he headed toward the building's exit, his heart racing. On the sidewalk, he turned to a group of people passing by. "Excuse me," he began, voice a bit shaky. "Have you seen a tall, skinny black boy with a backpack? His name is Malik." One of the passersby, a middle-aged man wearing a shirt that displayed a message of support for the demonstration, shook his head. "Sorry, I haven't seen anyone like that around here, but the protest has everyone running around. He might have wandered off." David thanked him and moved on, his eyes scanning every face, past. The city was alive. He felt isolated, as if he were in a bubble. He knew he couldn't give up. What was at stake was far greater than his pride. Passing by a park where some people were gathering to protest, David spotted a group of teenagers. He approached, trying to remain calm. "Hey guys, have you seen a boy named Malik? He's pretty young and had a backpack." One of the young men, wearing a cap turned backwards, looked at David with curiosity. "Malik? No, but if he's around, he's probably near the school where the other boys usually hang out." David thanked him and quickly headed towards the school, his heart pounding. Each step he took was an internal struggle against the prejudice that had dominated his life until now. He remembered Malik alone and vulnerable, and felt a wave of empathy wash over him. "If I find him, I need to show him he's not alone." On the way, he recalled Malik's expression at the door of his office, the confusion and sadness on his face. David felt ashamed as he remembered the disregard he had shown. "I can't let this happen again," he promised himself, his determination renewed. Arriving at the school, he saw a group of young people gathered on a corner. David stopped, taking a deep breath before approaching them. "Excuse me," he said, trying to sound calm. "I'm looking for a boy named Malik. He's a great musician and needs help." A girl with braided hair looked at him, her gaze evaluating. "Malik? He was here, but he ran off a while ago. He said he had to go to an important place." David's heart sank. "Do you know where he went?" "I'm not sure, but I heard him talking about a place where they make music. Something about a contest or a performance," she replied, furrowing her brow. "If he's there, you might find him." David felt a wave of hope. "Thank you. Do you know where that place is?" As soon as he got the directions, he set off. The city felt less chaotic now, as if everything was moving in slow motion, while his mind focused on finding Malik. Couldn't let the boy miss this opportunity. What was just a normal day had now turned into a race against time, and David was determined to be the hero of this story. Chaos around him only heightened his anxiety. He knew Malik was in trouble and that every second counted. With his mind fueled by a mix of fear and urgency, he began asking passers-by if they had seen the boy. "Hey, have you seen a black boy with a backpack? His name is Malik?" David asked a group of young people passing by. One of the guys, wearing a backward cap, looked at him with disdain. "Anyone could be lost around here, man. Try your luck somewhere else." He walked away, followed by his friends, leaving David frustrated and powerless. David continued his search, weaving through the bustling crowd. He felt like an intruder, man in a suit and tie amidst a sea of people who shared a struggle he barely understood. The weight of his own beliefs and prejudices began to manifest in his mind. "Why can't I connect with these people?" thought, battling the thoughts telling him to back away, to return to the comfort of his office. As he turned a corner, he spotted an elderly woman sitting on a bench, a look of concern on her face. "Ma'am, please, have you seen a boy named Malik? He's in trouble, and I need to find him," pleaded, his voice heavy with desperation. The woman looked at him with a mix of compassion and distrust. "A boy? Here? I haven't seen him, but many young people are running around. You need to be careful, dear." She shook her head as if recalling her own grandchildren, before turning her attention back to the group of protesters in front of her. "Thank you," David said, but the woman was already distracted, and he continued on, increasingly anxious. His phone vibrated in his pocket. It was a message from Mr. Thompson. "David, Malik's interview is soon. Where are you?" Pressure was mounting. He had no answer for the desperate father, and the responsibility weighed heavily on his shoulders. "I need to find him," he murmured as he walked through the streets, trying to ignore the hostile stares and murmurs of the protesters. He felt like an outsider, a man who had always had everything, now in a world that was strangely hostile to him. In a moment of desperation, he decided to step into a small cafe on the corner of the street. The aroma of fresh coffee and warm bread contrasted with the chaos outside. "Have you seen a boy named Malik?" he asked the barista, who looked at him with disdain. "Here? I only see people trying to get by." David felt frustration rising, but he couldn't give up. He looked out the window and saw a group of teenagers laughing and playing. "If I were Malik, where would I be?" he thought, trying to put himself in the boy's shoes. He remembered Mr. Thompson's words about Malik's struggle and the importance of that scholarship. He decided to head to the city park, a place where many children used to play. The hope of finding Malik guided him. On arriving, he saw children playing soccer, but there was no sign of the boy he was looking for. Anguish began to consume his mind when, suddenly, a familiar voice echoed in the background. Finally, in the distance, he spotted a small figure sitting on a bench, head down. As he approached, David could see it was Malik, with the wet backpack resting on his lap. David's heart tightened as he noticed the tears streaming down the boy's face. "Malik," called softly, trying not to startle him. Malik lifted his head and his eyes, heavy with sadness, met David's. "What do you want?" the boy asked, his voice choked and full of distrust. I'm sorry for what happened. I didn't know you were just trying to apply for the scholarship. I was an idiot," David said, the sincerity in his words making Malik look at him closely. "Please, let me help you. We can still make it in time. Do you think I'm going to trust you now?" Malik replied, his bravery reflecting the pain he felt. "You kicked me out like I was trash. I understand, and I have no excuses for what I did," David admitted, his voice firm but filled with remorse. "But please, let me try to make it right. Your interview is very important." The boy hesitated, looking at the soaked backpack that contained his dreams. "What if I don't make it? What if all of this is in vain?" Malik's words were a mix of hope and despair. "If you don't try, you'll never know," David replied, crouching to his height. "And I promise I will help you. You have an incredible talent, Malik. I saw it in your eyes when you were in the office. Let's go together." After a moment of silence, Malik finally nodded, determination beginning to shine in his eyes. "Okay, but if you let me down again, I'll never want to see you again," he said with a lightness that mixed. "I promise I won't let go," David stated, feeling a new purpose emerge within him. "Let's run." The two took off in a hurried sprint, crossing the park and the bustling streets. David felt the adrenaline pumping through his veins, but what motivated him most was the faith that was beginning to grow in Malik. As they ran, they started to talk. "Do you play any instruments?" David asked, trying to break the ice. I sing, Malik replied hesitantly, but no one ever wanted to listen. They only see the color of my skin and don't look at what I can do. David stopped for a moment, his heart tightening again. Malik, you have to show the world who you really are. Your voice can be more powerful than you imagine. Trust me, you will shine. They arrived at the interview location, and David felt a lump in his throat as he saw the imposing building that housed so many opportunities. Malik looked at him, a mix of nervousness and hope etched on his face. Let's go, David encouraged, placing his hand on Malik's shoulder. Are you ready to show the world who you are? Yes, Malik replied, and for the first time, a genuine smile appeared on his lips. Let's go. As they entered the building, they were greeted by a coordinator who at first looked at Malik and his dirty suit with suspicion. David, firmly and confidently, introduced Malik and explained the situation to the coordinator. The man, touched by the story, decided to give the boy a chance. Malik was led to a room where the judging panel was waiting. He positioned himself, took a deep breath, and began to sing. His voice, powerful and full of emotion, echoed through the room, silencing any doubts the evaluators might have had. Each note he hit seemed to carry not just his talent, but also his determination and struggle. When he finished, the room was silent for a moment before erupting in applause. Malik smiled shyly, looking at David, who was at the door with tears in his eyes. The coordinator approached and with a smile announced that Malik had been accepted with a full scholarship. You did it, Malik. You did it, David exclaimed, hugging the boy. Malik, still in shock, smiled widely, feeling that his world was about to change for the better. Later, as they exited the building, Mr. Thompson appeared, breathless and with worry in his eyes. Upon seeing his son, on the contrary, she was full of dreams and renewed hopes. And David, by her side, felt that, somehow, his own life had also changed forever. Did you like the story? Don't forget to like the video and follow our channel for more exciting content. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates. See you next time.